the biggest things you got to learn in this world is know when to wrap and know when to pull it off the pit. That's it. You learn those two things, you can cook some amazing food, and I don't care what it is.
Interesting, yeah.
I mean, keep it simple. Keep your cooking simple. Once you set up a timeline on how you like to cook, that's the biggest thing and stuff, is to learn those time frames, because then you're not, for say, running around like a chicken with your head cut off.
This is Easy Does It Barbecue with your host, Dan McDonald, owner of Colorado Barbecue Outfitters. If you're ready to dig into some serious talk about all things barbecue, from the moo to the oink, grab a cold one and let's get down to business. Now, here's Dan McDonald.
Hey everyone, you're listening to Easy Does It Barbecue. We call it Easy Does It Barbecue because we generally talk about the easiest way to do it. However, last week's topic, we had Brian Guerrero in, who is the owner of Guerrero Concrete and also the competition team BBQ 22 here locally, competes around Colorado. Like I said, Brian wears many hats. He's also my sales rep for Green Mountain Grills, which Colorado Barbecue Outfitters proudly sells at the store, and Brian uses in his competitions. So just a real quick recap of last week's conversation. Brian walked us through the pre-event preparation he did as early as a week before, and just kind of took us through getting his meat and prepping his smokers. We learned that a well-seasoned smoker is not necessarily a good smoker last week. I think that probably took a lot of us by surprise. He cleans his smokers very diligently before every competition, as do most of the more successful teams, we found out. So where we left off was Brian hooks his equipment up and drives to the site. He has a spot that's usually already designated for him, and starts to set up camp. We left it at the inspection is done Friday morning generally, and after that we'll take it from there, Brian, if that's okay. So last week we talked about the inspection. They come around, they check your meat in the cooler, make sure everything's raw. Nothing, you can trim it, we found out, but you cannot prepare it any other way. And so let's go from there. So after the inspection, I know one thing I wanted to ask you. Last week you mentioned that on Friday, once you get set up and inspected, unless you have any pre-cook stuff to do, you can just kind of kick back a little bit and enjoy the day to a degree. You said some of the teams will play games, things like that. Are there any competition team rituals that you guys do every weekend as a group that you could walk the listeners through? I know. I heard, for example, that there might have been like a pre-competition drink or something, or a toast or a celebration or something like that. Can you walk the listeners through any kind of rituals that you guys might do, or maybe you don't do?
Oh yeah, we do. One of the big things Friday nights is typically there's kind of like a banquet or everybody potluck.
Okay.
Everybody just kind of brings a side or something, and I usually have somebody will kind of host that kind of thing where everybody kind of get around for about an hour.
One of the teams hosts that.
One of the teams.
And they just take turns doing that?
Yeah.
Okay, that's very cool. And it's just like camaraderie, or what are you guys generally doing during this potluck? I imagine you're not sharing secrets.
Yeah, there's guys that are sitting there trying to get stuff out of you. Especially as you start knowing everybody's kind of got their strengths, and I know a couple guys try to continuously try and get a couple tips out of me and stuff. But
always competing. I love it. Okay.
And I just simply tell them, well, you can go to this class and you'll learn what you need. You got to invest some money, go to the class, because I did.
On the other side of that coin, it doesn't hurt to ask, right?
Yeah.
Although what I'd be afraid of is somebody would purposely tell me the wrong answer to sabotage me, then give me the right answer. That'd be my concern. So
how will you bluff in those situations?
Yeah, exactly. How do you know what they're telling you is helpful?
And I know I've never been a very good poker player, so I couldn't read anybody like that. But yeah, Friday nights are really fun. Usually during the day, it's so relaxing. It's really quiet, really peaceful. There's guys that are, doing injecting or or just doing stuff, or
Pre-competition prep.
yeah,
Everything. Brining.
just whatever they're
putting on their dry brine ahead of time. Yeah.
I mean, I know some guys that just take naps during the day and stuff. You know, so it's,
I think that would be something I would do.
I've done that a couple times myself too. It is quite neat.
It's a lot of work after that drive. Yeah.
But so yeah, I mean, after typically 4 o'clock, 4:30, there's a cooks meeting. So basically, that's pretty important to go to, in the sense that, one, they give you your goodie bag, because these events, they always give you a little to-go bag, and it's got some products in there that are always nice to have. Just shows
It's
a
just
little
sponsors donating stuff. Yeah. Okay.
But then they go over all the rules again, their turn-ins. It's almost that you've been to one, you've been to them all. But there's always stuff that might change, may or may not change. Your turn-in times never change. Those are set in stone.
Oh, interesting. So those are always locked in. That makes sense to me, though. That way
and stuff,
you don't have to panic about different times. Okay, interesting.
And they pretty much go over, okay, if you have emergency, call 911, or if you need something to talk to a rep, then, he gives his phone number out. So you always got a way to get a hold of somebody.
Good, yeah.
And stuff. So it's... you get to just kind of shoot the breeze with the other guys around there or other teams. Yeah. And pretty much after people's choice, obviously you have, either go to the potluck, you got the potluck, but that's kind of when everything really starts kind of ramping up. A lot of these events have bands and that kind of thing. So, at 6 o'clock, usually the bands are playing from 6 to 10.
This is Friday now?
Friday night.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So there's entertainment.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of entertainment stuff.
I want to, real quick, if it's okay, I want to go back, because I want to make sure that we get this information, everyone. So back to the inspection. We just talked about food. Do they inspect your smokers? Do they make sure that you have fire safety, or is it the honor system with that?
That's the honor system.
Okay.
And just as long as some of these competitions are 50-50 with fire extinguishers, but it's always a good thing to have.
Well, yeah, I would think common sense would rule there.
I've never seen anybody use it. I've never had to use mine, but it's
a good thing to have.
It's a good thing to have.
Yeah, that's a good thing to emphasize. And I would even take, if it's okay, Brian, I would even emphasize, guys, even for us backyard barbecuers, it's a good idea to have a full fire extinguisher, not only at your house, but on hand anytime you're doing outdoor cooking. And then I'll also throw out, make sure you have your fire extinguishers inspected. A lot of us put them in a place in our house, and then we leave them for years. So I just wanted to throw that out. But anyway, so Brian, back to Friday. It sounds fun to me. I mean, it sounds like once you get there and set up, whether it's Thursday night or Friday morning, and you go through your inspection, and it sounds like it's kind of a good time for you guys before the stress hits of the cook. Yeah. Oh yeah. So I like that you're relaxing and
typically after dinner and stuff, and my dad will usually grill some burgers, or if we don't do a potluck or something, notice teams that'll just grill up burgers or go out to eat or whatever. But pretty much my game face time is around 7 o'clock Friday night.
That's when it gets serious for you?
That's when I really start getting focused on what I got to do. And typically right there, I mean, I know from 7 to 9, I got my ribs to inject. I got my pork to inject. I got to, finish seasoning my brisket kind of thing, because my brisket goes on around midnight and stuff is what I really try and shoot for. The biggest thing, and I mean, when I first started, I noticed everybody was the cooking technique, hot and fast. Everybody was cooking at 300, 350, 400, and it's still popular.
Really?
There's a couple.
That's interesting. It almost goes against your traditional barbecue cooking times of low and slow. So I think a lot of people are going to be really shocked to hear that you guys, that I consider professionals, a lot of you are cooking hotter.
Oh yeah.
That's wild.
That's style. I mean,
and there's no rule against that. I mean, if you want to do brisket, I guess at 400, you could do that.
You can do brisket
if it comes out.
That's one of those I tried. I literally tried for a couple of years. I even went to the Gateway Drum Smoker class. I learned from world champion on the Gateway drums, Tim Shear, and I've tried it at home, and it's just the technique I just can't get down with brisket. So it's my wife was like, why don't you just go back to low and slow brisket? And I was like, you know what? Let's do it. And, it turned out better for us. I mean, you're judged on appearance, taste, and tenderness. nowhere on that scorecard does it say you're timed. You know, you get judged on how fast you get something done.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's no, I mean, if you traditionally, there's nothing wrong. I mean, I know there's cooks out there that are low and slow cooks that do very well in the circuit. You know, some of these, and with my brisket, I like to do my brisket low and slow. So, I mean, my brisket will take from 12 o'clock, and of course, I trim them down. I'd start out with 16, 17-pound brisket, and I'll probably end up cooking about maybe a 13-pound brisket and stuff when it's all said and done. But, you know, that takes 10 hours to do. So, with that, you know, it's one of those things, you know, you just don't. Then there again, some guys will throw an 18-pound brisket and then cut it to the size of their box after.
Really? Yeah.
You know, it's just how you want to do it, how you want to run your program and stuff.
Yeah. So there's, I mean, the moral of this story, and I've always told in my barbecue classes that I teach my students, and that there really is no right way to do it. The right way is your way, is what I've always preached with barbecue, and that's what I think makes it such an interesting hobby or way to cook, because there's so many different ways to get ultimately in your case the end result of that one bite wow for the judge. So again, you said, Brian, you get your game face as you put it on at Friday about 7. What does that mean exactly? Are you starting to prep meat? Are you putting rub on, or have you already done that at that point?
No, when it comes to chicken, ribs, and pork, those guys wait till Saturday morning.
Okay.
And stuff, because I like to be in bed at 9 o'clock. That's just, it's a good number for me. And, you know, I'd take a little cat nap, throw the brisket on,
nice sleep.
go back to take another little cat nap, and then 3 o'clock, I'm wide awake and ready to go. You know, I'm checking brisket.
3 a.m. Saturday morning.
Saturday morning.
Okay.
I'm checking brisket, and well, then I know my pork is going on at 5 o'clock in the morning. So, I mean, after I check brisket, I like my rub to sit on the pork for, hour and a half, 2 hours. So I pull everything out of the cooler and set it on the table and season that up and go check brisket. And, of course, I drink a cup of coffee and,
wake yourself up.
Wake myself up. And so how I do my times is I try and overlap everything, so I at least got a half an hour to 45-minute in between stuff. Because it's, you know, we know we all can cook. You know, when we're doing practice at home, for instance, we can cook chicken because we got 12 pieces of chicken that we look at, or cooking at home to practice, or we got 2 to 4 racks of ribs that we're practicing at home. You got to learn that you're cooking 4 meats at the same time. So that's where
that all independently cook differently.
Exactly.
Is my experience anyway.
And some guys, they have the big jambos. So I mean, they have their certain wood that they run with, and they start brisket off on one side of the jambo or an offset cooker. Tell people
what that is, Brian. For those that don't know what a jambo is, explain that.
Those are like just a smoker that you got a firebox, and it's probably, they range anywhere from 4 to 8 foot long.
Yeah, so the big trailered offsets, is that safe to say? Okay. I just wanted people to get a mental image of what you mean by that. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
And stuff. And I know that's a world I don't know if I could learn how to cook on. That's a different style of breed of cooking right there.
That's the old school purist there.
Yeah. And the thing with those ones there are a lot of practice. No, of course, I know a lot of guys that do it, but you can't really check your meat too much in those jambos or those offsets, because once you open that lid, you lose a lot of heat because you have such a big cooking chamber that you're cooking in. So now, the less you're opening and closing that lid, it's not like a can, like a Gateway smoker. I mean, you lift that lid off, you check your meat, you put it down, you set your lid on, and you're back at 300 degrees within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You're right back at your cooking temp. So that's what not only that, the can's really light and they're really maneuverable and stuff. So, it's one of those things that you just got to, whatever kind of cooker you want to cook on.
So that begs the question. I'm glad you said that. That begs the question. Are there different categories for different smokers? I mean, for example, these old school guys, are they going against each other, or it doesn't matter? It doesn't matter if you're using a wood pellet grill or you are super old school ugly drum smoker. Yeah. You're all up against each other. It's all
an even playing field.
That's interesting.
Just how you want to cook it.
That people take their choice. Yeah.
the biggest thing, I mean, is know your cooker and how you want to cook. I think a lot of people take, hot and fast, okay? Cooking on a can, I can cook 300, I cook 350, I can cook 400. In a blink of an eye, I can get that temperature up there.
Yeah.
Now, if you have, like, say, a cabinet smokers, you can't get those guys above 250, 275.
Yeah. You're going low and slow whether you want to or not.
Yeah, you can't go hot and fast on a cabinet. It's just impossible to do, kind of thing. But, 5 o'clock, I light my can about 4:15. Get him stabilized, get him going. 5 o'clock pork goes on, and right when pork goes on, then I start pulling my ribs out, season my ribs out and stuff. And I got a process with my pork. I've got to spin it, and I got to rotate the meat, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's like an every 20-minute timer on my phone that I set. So, after predominantly after my first turn, because the way I cook, I'll cook open for about 2 hours, 2 hours and 20 minutes. Just there again, it's just cooking. It's you got to look for your color, when to wrap. I mean, the biggest things you got to learn in this world is know when to wrap and know when to pull it off the pit. That's it. You learn those two things, you can cook some amazing food, and I don't care what it is.
Interesting, yeah.
I mean, keep it simple. Keep your cooking simple. But there again, you can have a general outline. I mean, but sometimes right there, pork, for instance, he's ready to wrap in 2 hours. Sometimes it's 2.5 hours. You never know. It's just how that meat's cooking that day.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's where you gotta, and there take notes and stuff to keep track of it. But after pork goes on and I season my ribs, I pull my chicken out and I inject chicken and stuff, because my injection, I
You're
like
talking about raw now. This is before you cook. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course, the day before I brine my chicken, and which is a salt sugar brine. Well, now when I inject my chicken, it's more of a buttery and chicken concentrate kind of thing, low sodium kind of injection, so they kind of play off each other. And then that injection sits in there for a couple hours. So now it's 8 o'clock, I know, or 7:15. My rib can goes on. I put my ribs on at 8 o'clock, and pretty much around after ribs go on the cooker, now I've got about a half an hour, 45-minute window there where I know my pork, within that time frame, it's going to be wrapped, or it's time to wrap it and stuff. Yeah. So typically by then, I'm pulling my pork off, I put it back on the can, I wrap it, put my ThermalWorks thermometer in there. I have set times where I start checking for tenderness, kind of thing, but this gives me a way to where I'm not constantly having to open a lid, close a lid, open foil. I look at a number, and there again, once you cook at a certain temperature and you've cooked 100 pork butts, you already start getting a sense of when to check stuff. 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock, 8:15, my chicken can gets fired. I put my chicken on at 9 o'clock, and then so it's. Those are the 45-minute windows that you constantly, when to put the meat on. Because the last thing, and it took a few competitions to learn this one, is there was times where I knew how long it took me to cook stuff, but I wasn't really, I guess you could say, put them on the right time. Mm-hmm. Because, there was times where, I got to wrap pork, and then all of a sudden I got to wrap ribs, and I'm starting to things are getting overdone here and there. But once you set up a timeline on how you like to cook, that's the biggest thing and stuff, is to learn those time frames, because then you're not for say running around like a chicken with your head cut off.
Pardon the pun.
Yeah.
But okay, I want to go back to you. So it's almost like you're kind of in robot mode as far as your times. You've done this enough times. However, prior to the show, we were chatting about elevation. We live in Colorado. Mm-hmm. We've got a lot of different. We've got a lot of different. I'm imagining Lamar down in the southeast part of the state is going to be a different elevation than you mentioned. Alamosa's at 7,500 feet. There used to be a big competition in Frisco. That's 8,000-9,000 feet. Yeah. So
then you had Leadville, which was
that's got to be even
10.5 in Leadville. They don't have that one anymore.
So you're at that point. I imagine you can't be in robot mode. This is where you have to take your experience and your know-how and possibly change those cooking times I
would
imagine
say
because
yes.
of altitude, or no?
Mhm. Yeah. Well, the higher you go in altitude, for instance, the longer your stuff's going to take to get done.
Yeah,
'Cause you got
that's
to
been
remember,
my experience. So that's why I assume
it takes longer for water to boil.
Yeah, so
I mean,
you have to adjust those times. Now, I imagine if you've been to Lead, let's see. I mean, if this is your fourth time in Leadville, you've probably gone by experience. But I'm thinking that first time again, the people that are listening are either just interested in it, or they might even want to get into doing it. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But so you do have to adjust your cooks for altitude, which is the point. Yeah. Okay.
And that's the other thing. Every time I go to a cook, I have a notebook that I literally, when I get home Sundays, I'll be like, okay, I know what my times that I usually put stuff on, and then I'll see if I have to change anything up.
Yep.
Like Alamosa, when I first started in Alamosa there, I mean, I think half of my meats, the very first time, half of my meats were done. I mean, they were cooked over the, FDA. I wasn't turning in raw food. But, there's certain temperatures that, you get a really good tenderness at. I mean, brisket, for instance, the temperature at which water boils is a good guideline to really start zeroing in on tenderness. So, I mean, water boils at all these different elevations kind of things. Yeah. So you got to know when to check it, or, at least it gives you a gauge, a number. It's not going to hit that number and be tender every single time.
Yeah.
You might get it here and there kind of thing, but at least you got a guideline to go off of. But there again, water boils in Alamosa at, I think it's like around 197.8 degrees or 198 degrees. Leadville or anything else, they're like 195.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So basically, one of the general, I'd say, barbecue rules to always keep in mind is you always want to rest your meat. You always want to have that 2 hour, hour and a half to 2.5 hours. There's no rule that says it can't rest. And I've rested some meat when I have had to make adjustments, like, let me start a half an hour early kind of thing. So I'll start early. Sometimes it's done on my normal time frame that I know it's done, and sometimes it's not. But, if it's done earlier, at least it's done. I put it in my food warmer, and if it has to rest for 2.5 hours instead of 2 hours, so be it.
So be it. Yeah, exactly.
It's done. So those are just kind of the things. So I guess when you're learning new stuff, because I mean you can always rewarm stuff. I mean,
and I've always told my students that same thing. It's always better to be done early than late, because you can warm it. Or in our case of backyard barbecue, we can get away with rewarming it. I mean, we're not doing that one bite. Wow! But I wanted to mention real quickly, because a lot of you are probably wondering, why are these guys talking so much about water boiling point? A lot of this meat that Brian's using, it has a great deal of moisture in it, folks. I mean, meat is, I don't know, 80% water or something like that.
Yeah.
So it is going to affect his cook in elevation, and it's something that he and all the other professional competition teams have to take into account. And you also mentioned another thing that I preach, and that is taking notes. At the store, I sell a barbecue journal, but it can be just a notebook, and I do it religiously, even as a backyard barbecuer. I can see why competition teams do it, because they're going for money, they're going for purses, and there's a lot on the line for them. For us backyard barbecuers, ego, pride, and just feeding your family a good quality food. But a lot of people think that I take notes to document failures, and it's actually, I want to document successes so I can repeat it again. So everything. That is exactly why I do it, and I'm glad you emphasize that. So for the listeners, I can't say it enough. Take notes on your cooks.
Exactly. I mean, we can't. I mean, there's so much stuff that, once your mind starts going, you start thinking, okay, I wonder what this rub tastes like with this one. And, you start going, and before you know it, you forgot what, one step or one little technique that you did that you really liked. Unless you keep doing it. Yeah, you could easily forget a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And I've literally had to backtrack, because there's been a couple times that I didn't write something down, and I'm like, what the heck did I do? Yeah. Well, then it took me a couple cooks or practice cooks at home. That's what I did. So then I go back to the notes and I write it down in there and stuff. And, everybody's going to have different cooking techniques, different styles of cooking. There's no wrong or right way. whatever makes sense to you and stuff.
Brian, in the few minutes we have left here, I want to cover a couple things before we run out of time. One of them is, so we've taken our timeline up to the cook. It's Saturday, you're cooking now, you're checking your meat. Just real quickly, do a lot of teams take advantage of a lot of the digital accessory? For example, the charcoal guys, are they using the BBQs out there or the fans that are, is that okay? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So you can take full advantage of technology.
You can do full advantage
all right.
of technology.
And I bring that up because 10 years ago, wood pellet grills were outlawed in the competition market.
Exactly right.
Until some of those makers lobbied, basically KCBS, and proved that it was a wood fire. But anyway, so it's Saturday. Real quickly, what are the average turn-in times for the meats you've got to turn in?
Chicken is always at 12 o'clock. Ribs are at 12:30. Pork is at 1, and brisket is at 1:30.
Okay, so once again, just in a couple minutes here or less, tell us quick. So you've turned in your food. There now. It's I can imagine it's got to be just painstaking wait to find out how you did. When do you real quickly tell the people? Is it you meet at what time on Saturday would everyone meet to hear the winners?
That usually the award ceremony usually is around the 4:30 kind of time.
So from 1:30 to 4:30, you're just waiting. You're maybe taking down your area
your
at that point. You're cleaning up, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cleaning up and sometimes my wife, she likes doing People's Choice. So People's Choice is a thing where they'll come around. They give you a couple pork butts on Fridays, and the organization. People buy tokens, and then they split the profit with you 50-50. So depending on how many samples you get, and that's some guys do it. It's a complete voluntary thing and stuff. So basically, usually People's Choice is like from 11 o'clock to about 2 or 3.
Okay.
Which they have volunteers that hand out the food. And it's kind of
and that's for the public that comes.
That's for the public to come and stuff.
Which, by the way, folks, I've been to these. It may not sound interesting, but like Brian said, they have family entertainment almost always. Needless to say, there's a ton of food. I highly encourage you to take the family to a barbecue competition if you ever can. They're actually a lot of fun as a spectator. One last real quick, and the one that I know is on my mind, and I hear this all the time. What do they do with all the food that's turned in? Because you mentioned in another show earlier that it's usually they're taking one bite. Is it getting thrown out? Are there people eating the leftovers? What happens to all of it?
Believe it or not, the judges, you'll see them. They'll come and they'll bring their own coolers.
And good. So I was going to ask, do they get to take the food home?
If they like it, then they're
that's phenomenal.
They'll get to take the food that they like, and some of them take all of it. Some will tell you we only take the food that we like. So hopefully you got good food that they can. Well, good. They can eat and stuff.
Yeah.
But,
well, Brian, listen, thank you for being on the show today and walking us through all the competition. I think we could have probably even fit an entire another show on that. Good luck to your future competitions.
Thank you.
Colorado Barbecue Outfitters will be sponsoring Barbecue 22, a team for the Rocky Mountain Pig Jig that's coming up. I think it's the first weekend of September, if I remember correctly. Yeah. And I'll be posting more information about that on social media. So thanks again, Brian. Thanks, everybody, for listening. You've been listening to the Easy Does It Barbecue Show. My name is Dan McDonald, owner and operator of Colorado Barbecue Outfitters. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to Easy Does It Barbecue, brought to you by Colorado Barbecue Outfitters, specializing in pellet grills, charcoal grills, electric smokers, sauces, rubs, and barbecue accessories. Online at 719bbq.com. See you next Saturday at 1 for Easy Does It Barbecue. And listen to the podcast on Podbean.